Oh,
then I can transfer it. That's right.
Very good. All right, so welcome everyone to the Co-Creators Convergence celebration of World Unity Week. I'm Noelle Marshall, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Co-Creators Convergence. And right now you are in the Co-Creators Global Village. And that's where 4 different organizations went together. So we're this little village inside of worldunityweek.org. Well, we have a real special treat. You think World Unity Week is over? Not so. We have Annie Spade coming up, and Annie is, I love, she's going to be talking about finding home in nature again and cosmic conversations with children, which my parents forgot to have with me. So I'm so wonderful that Annie's here and got me, I've gone through a re-education program. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my dear friend, Annie Spade. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you so much, Noelle. It's great to be here with World Unity Week 3, Chapter 3, coming home together. And it just felt so much like this subject, this topic should come back after 2 years. And we'll play some of that tonight. I want to introduce it and put that context in, but I'm just thrilled to be here on Friday night doing something with this topic, which is just so near to my heart and my passion. And the children just are so delightful and so inspiring. I used those 2 words to describe this, not because I'm delightful and inspiring, but because the children are just so amazing and have so much to bring to us. So what I would like to do is introduce this video, which is on YouTube from World Unity Week 2020. And that year, this offering, which was just simply called Finding Home in Nature Again, was offered on the Radical Joy for Hard Times stage, and in that room. And the woman who started that organization, because it's an organization as well, is Trevi Johnson. And Trevi, I did not know her work well at that point, but I've since come to know that Radical Joy for Hard Times is focused on places in the world that are wounded. And when we just think of that, places in the world that are wounded, we could really just go there in terms of the things that have happened environmentally, things that have happened to the human family in different places, from lynchings to battles and massacres, and just there's just so much blood that's been spilled on the earth, and so much sap, I'll say that, to speak of the environmental degradation. I grew up in West Texas until I was 16, and that's oil country, and had been overgrazed before oil was discovered. So it's just overgrown with mesquite trees, and now it's got all the oil trash all over it. I mean, it's just a ravaged land, and those places are everywhere. So for Trevi to invite me to offer what the child can bring in for healing in these places was really precious, and she just had such a feeling for it. I'm gonna start after her introduction, actually, though, because there was just kind of some long introductions from people that were there and everything. So I'll hop into this. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that, at that time, I forgot now what the theme was that first year, something about unity, I think. But this year it's coming home together. And the children the child in each of us, I believe, is calling us home. And I've been working with children in a Montessori context for 40 years. And I'm here to say that young children offer to us the way home. And that's come out over and over. I know Jennifer and Carol, y'all were both in on the Deep Time Network conversations that we've had, and that has come through, not from me, but through conversation, that children really bring us to that place of origin that we're all seeking to find again. And when we do, it is that place of acceptance and peace and joy and wonderment. And so just thrilled to play a little bit of this from last year. From 2 years ago. And then I would love to then come back in, and we'll have some conversation around it. And also, it's, we're always evolving. And actually, after I offered this in June of 2020, I was invited to the Deep Time Network course in the spring of 2021. So I was introduced to all these cosmic themes. And even though I'm a Montessorian, I don't work with the 6 to 12-year-olds, where cosmic education is really a bedrock. And so I never really thought about bringing it to the younger children, the 2 to 6-year-olds that I work with. But after that course, and just over time, I just kind of started to dip into it a little bit, because you'll hear me say in this presentation that children are naturally metaphysical, that they just kind of know things, they're intuitive beings, right? And we are too. This is all through here. Really want to recognize the child in ourselves that is still seeking, that is still asking these same questions, and still has these characteristics, buried though they may be. They tend to resonate in people almost immediately, that we recognize and remember. So the children have really taken to these cosmic themes that I have been inspired to bring in since doing the Deep Time course. So without further ado, I'm going to share screen and share about 50 minutes. It'll go through Treby's offering of, she shared a precious experience from when she was a child, and we'll end there, and then we'll share our own experiences and comments and whatnot. So I'd like to next share with you a reading from Eco-Psychology that was actually, it's from an essay by Paul Shepard. And he speaks of the origins of human life and how the infant emerges from the womb. He mentions how the newborn needs association with the mother, first of all, whatever the circumstances. And then he says, for the infant as person to be, the shape of all otherness grows out of that maternal relationship. Yet the setting of that relationship was, in the evolution of humankind, a surround of living plants, rich in texture, smell, and motion. The unfiltered, unpolluted air, the flicker of wild birds, real sunshine and rain, mud to be tasted, and tree bark to grasp, the sounds of wind and water, the voices of animals and insects and humans. All these are not vague and pleasant amenities for the infant, but the stuff out of which its second grounding, even while in its mother's arms, has begun. Paul Shepard goes on to call this a second fetal landscape, where he says the surroundings are also that which will be swallowed, internalized, and incorporated as the self. So we think about how we come into life now, so often, especially in the first world, and we could have a conversation about this. We could all call that in, that the infant is kept out of the natural world, mostly. Maybe the child is put in a stroller, but overall, we're indoors and kept apart from this natural environment, this second fetal environment that is meant to bring us into life, that is our home, that we're meant to incorporate into our lives and to form the bedrock of our lives. And so, you know, I began to really reflect on even, you know, our birthplace. And because of the time that we were born, even had we been outdoors, I was born, my hometown is in oil country in West Texas, and the land was originally short grass prairie, and it was already overgrazed and overrun with mesquite trees. And then the Permian Basin oil discovery happened out there. And so, you know, I've often thought I would write my autobiography. I would introduce it with, I was born in a ravaged land. And very many of us were, and do recognize all the ways that our land has been disregarded and disrespected, beginning with the peoples that lived there. So we might say, well, we can see, and the eco-psychologists will say that this is going to have an emotional effect, clearly, in our lives and form a baseline for us. So we say, you know, what is our hope? When you read Paul Shepard's entire essay, you start to think that way. But I wanted to read this lovely couple of sentences from his last paragraph, where he says, "We have not lost, and we cannot lose the genuine impulse. It awaits only an authentic expression." So then we say, where is that genuine impulse and that authentic expression? And we know it must be back in our childhood, back in our infancy, indeed early childhood. And I feel like I'm speaking to, you know, those who know as well, that, you know, Montessori, I always describe Maria Montessori as someone who was willing to sit at the feet of children to discover what it was that was driving them, and to try to be as faithful as possible to nourishing that. You know, she came at it as a medical doctor, so from the scientific community, and she considered her work of observing the child to be her primary work, to listen and absorb everything she could about what the child was asking of us. And only a couple of years after Maria Montessori died in 1952, as she was planning her first training session in Africa at the age of 82, was when she died in Amsterdam. And just a couple of years after that, some of her disciples picked up a big work that she did not finish. She had begun to study the spirituality of the young child and to see what would be the most nurturing for the spiritual nature of the young child. She had absolutely seen it over and over again, the natural contemplative nature of the young child. And but she had not gotten very far with understanding what it was comprised of, and what would nourish it. So often, even in her work, it was what she found that would nourish it would help her to understand what the hunger was. So Dr. Sofia Cavalletti and John Agobi and others began in Rome in 1954 and studied the spiritual capacities of the young child. And the most central capacity, indeed the greatest potential that the young child has, the greatest yearning they have, is to fall in love. You know, it's so interesting when we think of where our culture is with that. If you were to say to someone, what is the most typical age to fall in love? And we would all say, well, your 20s, or, you know, whatever it would be. And there's something so much deeper than our gender and that whole idea of romantic love. So I just want to spend really most of the rest of the time breaking open what that means for the young child to fall in love, and how we support that, and what drives that, and what it looks like. We're going to share some videos from the school, some real short videos that I think will give you a really good sense of that. So a couple of things that undergird that, that Cavalletti and John Agobi discovered, is that the child wants to know what matters. Indeed, the child is essential. That's what they're seeking. I mean, we can clutter up their lives, but ultimately, what makes their heart sing is to know, to begin to uncover what is essential about life. So, you know, we can readily think, well, where does my food really come from? You know, you know, how were my clothes made, and just all kinds of awarenesses that we don't think, and we very often don't intentionally introduce the child to. But then the natural environment, to know the animals that really live here. And, you know, we tend to have these carpet lawns with oriental shrubbery that don't change in the seasons. And so the child sees very few of the insects and other animals that are seeking native plants. And so that question remains, and then the child will see if there's any kind of drive into the world. I think I didn't use this video, but one of the videos, the child says, oh, I see these, you know, in everyone's lawns. Well, I don't think so. She sees them on the sides of the road, you know, the horse mint growing up. But to begin to notice the natural world, and how do we normally refer to vegetation like that? Well, it's weeds, right? Oh, that's just weeds over there. Let's mow it down. so, um, so first of all, that to know what's here, to know what's really important and essential, and that includes what's beautiful, and then also a holistic vision. The child, Cavaletti says, is metaphysical. The child knows knows in that, my basis is in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and so there's that word knowing, that is a knowing like an intimate, erotic, sexual knowing, a real knowing, a real intimacy, full-blown intimacy with things. And so the child senses that. And I want to share with you one of the goals of my life is to have this beautiful little book called The Original Vision by Edward Robinson that was published in 1983 here in the States, republished. It is just such a gem, and I've been in love with it since the beginning. So he collected thousands of accounts from people who were very often in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and of the first experience that they had in nature that they could remember. And so I wanted to share with you this one from a woman who was 57 years old when she shared this with Edward Robinson. So it speaks to so many of the themes that we're going to talk about. The most profound experience of my life came to me when I was very young, between 4 and 5 years old. I am not mistaken in dating this because I remember so clearly both the place where it occurred and the shoes I was wearing at the time, of which I was rather fond. My mother and I were walking on a stretch of land known locally as the moors. As the sun declined and the slight chill of evening came on, a pearly mist formed over the ground. My feet, with the favorite black shoes with silver buckles, were gradually hidden from sight until I stood ankle deep in gently swirling vapor. Here and there, just the very tallest harebell flowers appeared above the mist. I had a great love of these exquisitely formed flowers and stood lost in wonder at the sight. Suddenly, I seemed to see the mist as a shimmering gossamer tissue, and the harebells, appearing here and there, seemed to shine with a brilliant fire. Somehow I understood that this was the living tissue of life itself, in which that which we call consciousness was embedded, appearing here and there as a shining focus of energy in a more diffused whole. In that moment, I knew that I had my own special place, as had all other things, animate and so-called inanimate, and that we were all part of this universal tissue, which was both fragile, yet immensely strong, and utterly good and beneficent. The vision has never left me. It is as clear today as 50 years ago. And with it, the same intense feeling of love of the world and the certainty of ultimate good. It gave me then a strong, clear sense of identity, which has withstood many vicissitudes, and an affinity with plants, birds, animals, even insects, and people too, which has often been commented upon. Of course, at the early age of 4 or 5, I could not have expressed anything of the experience in words, in the words I have now used. And perhaps the attempt to convey the absorption of myself in the whole and the intensity of meaning sounds merely overcolored. But the point is that by whatever mysterious perception, the whole impression and its total meaning were apprehended in a single instant. Years later, reading Meister Eckhart and Francis of Assisi, I have cried aloud with surprise and joy, knowing myself to be in the company of others who had shared the same kind of experience and who had been able to set it down so marvelously. This is not the only experience of the kind that has come to me, but it is without doubt the one which has laid the deepest foundations of my life and for which I feel the profoundest gratitude. So, consciously or unconsciously, I believe all of us had moments like this when we were young children. And so what I hope to be sharing with you here and what I found for myself is that in knowing and understanding early childhood better, we can continue to expand upon those sensibilities. And the other aspect that I want, the other driver, if you will, of this propensity of the child to fall in love is their sense of wonderment. And so Sophia and Jana write about the education to wonder is what they call it. And just what they discovered about nourishing the young child's natural sense of wonder. And she said, they say, first of all, the child needs to be given worthy things. And so we've already talked about that the child is interested in what's most essential, what's most beautiful, most important. So that's our first attention, is if we want to nourish the child's sense of wonderment, we need to be very intentional, and for ourselves too. So, there's the child and the child. So, in so many of these conversations, there's a reference to here's what we need to build for children. But my point here is to share what, as Trevi introduced us so well, is how we can nourish this for ourselves as well, and what the child has to teach us. So we want to give ourselves worthy things as well. And then to connect. And so I'd like to share with you now some of the tools, if you will, just a couple of simple tools. Seems a little obvious in some sense, but if we want to know what wildflowers are growing beside the roads, then we can avail ourselves of a nature guide of some sort, right? And if we want to know what animals live around here, what insects, what butterflies we're seeing, then we avail ourselves of some kind of nature guide. So many, many years ago, the Audubon pocket guides had come out, and that's what I created cards for the classroom so that the children can start to learn names. Language is very important to the children. And, when we have a name for something, then it really helps us to begin to appreciate the special qualities about that particular thing. So that's where the child is introduced very often, but it could go the other way. Like the child mentioning she had seen flowers on the side of the road. Well, let's go investigate and find out more about that. Find out its name and find out when it blooms and all that kind of thing. So, so we're going to share a couple of sets of cards, a set of purple wildflower cards, and some of the mammals from Central Texas. Lauren's going to share those, and then we're going to go into some videos and see how the children take that out into the field. So here are some of the medium-sized mammals in Central Texas. So we see possum and beaver and a couple of kinds of skunks, and yes, and then we go on to the wildflowers, and so many different types of purple wildflowers, white wildflowers. We kind of keep them like that in the colors, so it helps them to begin to find them and distinguish them. So I want to just kind of introduce the video section here, and we'll just kind of start with the first one. We've got a kind of intro one that I gave to Lauren, and let me just preface it by saying I don't video the children or take pictures of them. I feel that what they do at school is their sacred work. So I didn't have an archive of video, and we were closed for 3 months. And so what you're about to view is the children's first time back out onto, we have 8 acres. We've been hugely blessed to be on 8 acres that we've managed as a wildscape for 24 years. And the children love their nature walks where we walk on the driveway and the asphalt drive and see what we find. So, so you're going to see a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, especially, but they're always very excited, but I think it's even more so here. And these children are 5 and 6. So we see a milkweed pod here. I'm not hearing the audio, but I'm sure Lauren's gonna work on that. But we discovered that the milkweed that had been blooming when we closed have now opened and created these amazing seed pods. And now the children are discovering where the seed pods are. I don't know if you can, is the audio gonna work for us, Lauren?
I see a
Your head now?
stick seeds kind of shape. I see seeds
Now
inside.
that's just a little piece of leaf on there, right?
Like in the middle, there's like little tiny seeds.
Right.
Bye-bye. Mine went on the tree.
Did it? Oh my goodness,
on
they're
the
flying
wall.
everywhere.
That's mine.
So this will make more milkweeds for next year.
Now there's getting
Yeah, so the beginning of that, one of the children immediately remembered what the flower looked like, and looks completely different, of course, from this wild pod that the milkweed makes. And we're going to go on to some more of that. We encountered more milkweed down the drive, and you'll hear a little more of that joy and delight over that.
Sorry.
Recording again. Oh, what do you see?
horseman.
Horsemet. Bunch of it.
And I see that on somewhere, like on the sides of everybody's lawn. I keep seeing
Yeah, I
that.
keep seeing a lot of horsemen out there on the sides of the road, right?
Oh, and by the way, Miss Abby, I catched 11 grasshoppers before.
Did you?
Yep. Look at
It's
my backyard. Oh my gosh, do you see
so
that
much
white
fun.
one? Look at that
I
flower
was just
stand.
going to ask about that.
Look at that yellow
Sometime,
flower.
yeah, hang on just a moment.
Look at the white
Let's
one.
finish talking about the horse mint because somebody just mentioned something that some of them have some white and some of them are darker purple.
Like that one.
Yeah, but then some other ones are not so much. We see what other colors we see? We see some pink.
Hey, a three double.
And some of them have three different
A
ones
two
on the same
double.
stem, don't
Look
they?
at that.
Very nice.
Look at that yellow one.
That's right. I see that yellow one.
That's
It's got
kinda pink.
like a green thread, I think they call that, with a long green stem.
One.
Oh, there is a pink one. That's right. Nice.
Wow, I saw a bird in the distance.
Oh, yes, looks like a vulture.
Yeah. Where?
Yeah. Oh, it's way up there. Searching for something to eat.
Looks like a normal.
Let's see, what else do we see?
What's this? What's that grass?
Some type of grass?
I've seen
Oh,
this.
yeah, let's see.
Hey,
What is that?
another milkweed. No.
Yeah, I think
that
that
is a milkweed.
this might be part of the crabgrass. Yeah, that is some milkweed out there. Sure enough.
Crabgrass? What's crab?
Crabgrass. Oh, crabgrass right there.
Yeah, I've seen this on everybody's lawn too.
Right. Lots of that around. How about that?
Hey,
How about that yucca over there? Do we know that one?
Twisted leaf yucca.
Twisted leaf yucca. That's right. Oh, some fleabane daisy over there.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And there's also
That is the twisted leaf yucca, right?
this one?
Nope, right there.
That one.
See how some of the leaves twist right there?
By the way, Sandy,
Yeah.
at my house I have
Do you?
3 of them.
Now you know. Now this taller one you were asking about, this is called flame leaf sumac. Do you remember that the leaves turn
The video and audio are not syncing,
red
so.
in the cooler weather? Down here I see another little white flower. Do y'all know that one?
No, that's new.
Oh, we have that one in the classroom. That one's frog fruit.
Frog fruit.
Frog fruit. This.
Would you like me to go ahead and start the last video?
I was just gonna say, it's interesting, like they discovered the crabgrass. I don't know if you caught that. And yeah, it was, oh, I see it on all over the place, you know, it's like, yeah, invasive species, you know. So, but one of the children recognized that he had 3 twisted leaf yuccas and just really discovered a lot of things in that area. So then this is one that follows upon with the milkweed, the last one. There's another brief one where one of the children just, it's just, I want you to hear it first. Let's see.
That's not open yet.
That's a bud.
That dark brown one.
Hey, there's another one. There's
Yeah,
another one.
those have
And look,
already
dandelions.
popped open.
Dandelions.
Yep, those are about done, aren't they?
A seed flew over there. One of these seeds.
Did it?
Look, I got one. Whoa, this is so pretty. Hey, look, I got a seed. Oh, look. It started laying eggs. Oh, they hear me.
Oh, is there a creature?
I got a seed. No, it's so, it looks like beautiful white one.
Wow.
It's the beautiful
It
one.
does. The seeds are just popping out, aren't they?
And it has little brown stuff on it.
And the little brown stuff is probably the
Wow.
seed itself. Hang
Wow,
on just
there's
a
a
minute. What's
whole
that?
bunch of those kind of
Oh,
white
yes, that's a
flowers.
fresh one. And it's got a little seed right
No,
there.
wait, I found a bug. Yep, bug on that leaf right there.
There
Oh,
very
yeah.
often are some
It's a
bugs
little
here.
bug.
Oh, that's a really cool one.
I know.
Yellow and black.
It looks like a bug of.
Well, that's so wonderful. I just have to say, I'm just so enchanted by that.
They are enchanting. They they were chasing the seeds that day. I mean, we were out there for about 20, 25 minutes, I guess, and they were just so excited by the blowing seeds, and there were so many wildflowers they were enjoying. So following upon that, giving ourselves the time and space to enjoy, to really listen, to absorb. There was another video that we're not playing, but where the children, the longer we were out there, they started to say, "Oh, what's that? Oh, I heard something." And there were baby birds, and you could hear some little crickets off in the distance. So, you know, the senses just become more and more heightened the longer that you just spend the time in whatever you're doing. And be talking about that in just a moment, kind of that present moment work, if you will. But I just wanted to mention, in addition to introducing the child and ourselves to awareness of the natural world, elements, plant and animal world, we also, when we consider the holistic way that the child experiences life, helping them to connect to the various cycles. So we use the 4 elements. So each morning, and I use a particular system, if you will, or synchronometer that works through the 4 elements. So each day, one is kind of focused on. And so you've got earth and water and air and fire. And so at the beginning of each day, we have a time that we gather in circle. We're going to look at that in just a moment. But during that time is when we'll just highlight for the children the fact of we're all sitting on the earth, and the gravity is holding our bodies and holding the candle that's in the center and all the things in the room. You know, we'll just notice that on a day that we're going to notice the planet that we all share, the earth. Yeah, this is where we would do that in the morning when we're gathering. And I'll talk more about it in a few moments, but then we'll also talk about the water cycle and this water that we drink and all the different ways that it supports our body and comes out of our body. You know, clearly our body is using it in so many different ways, and just letting them be aware that their body is mostly water and manifests in our blood, but ears and our sweat and our pee and all of those things. And they're just so blessed by that. It's just absolutely feeds their sense of wonder to consider that cycle. And I was sharing this with an adult recently, and she said, "I want to come to your school," you know, just to focus on that type of thing at the beginning of each day. And then on air days, of course, we talk about how the plants clean the air, change the air for us from carbon dioxide to oxygen, a different type of air. And then when we breathe out carbon dioxide that the plants can use, and that we're all breathing one another's air all the time. And then the fire, of course, then we have our candle, and I'll talk about the way we bring each of these in a little bit. But with the fire, we call in awareness of the sun as a star. And is it the largest star? Well, no, it's just that it's the closest to us. It's the one that we can feel the heat of. and the one that we can have our world be lighted by. And so we definitely are aware of the moon phase and the way the moon reflects the light of the sun for us. The children just greatly appreciate that. And again, for all of us, we've lost sense of those cycles. There's so many adults that have no awareness of the moon phase or where or when you might see the moon. Some people think you only see the moon at night. They've never even observed the moon during the daytime. And so developing that practice of looking for the moon, because we'll do that then when we're on the playground, if it's there during the daytime. But I'll talk to them about, this evening when you're outside, you might see the new crescent moon as we do right now, just to help them to be watching for it. And they bring that to the circle all the time, that they saw it last night, and the excitement and joy is just as palpable as in these videos. So when I wanted to just use that sense of, just giving ourselves time to reflect on all these things and just enjoy and listen in nature, as a way of feeding our wonderment, to call in the concept of time, because in our culture, it's all about rushing and producing, and time is money and all of that, and natural time, the way the child and the indigenous peoples experience time, is not like that. In fact, just the cycles of the moon and of the sun are the way that we would really experience natural time. And within that, there's the present moment, and just being absorbed in the present moment, which the child, this was one of the most, the times that Maria Montessori was most amazed, was to see how the child, given a self-chosen work, whatever the work was, would just be so absorbed in it. And in fact, until the age of 4, the child is not even seemingly aware that, oh, I'm scrubbing this whole table or something. It's just the enjoyment of the process of it. And so, the indigenous peoples talk about time as art, and time as art happens in the present moment. That's where we experience life really as art, is by taking each moment on face value, and just really being deep with that moment, using our senses, and being appreciative of whatever it is that we're doing. And so, whatever our task at hand is, that's where so often we've gotten away from those practices that would help us to do that. When I think that we used to, gather fibers and have to spin them and then weave them and then make them into some cloth that we could use. The opportunity for living in the present moment, contemplative practice, is so rich. Washing our own dishes. We stick them in the dishwasher now, so we lose that sense. But we can still recapture it with, at least rinsing them, but maybe even taking that on as a practice, because, again, as the 3-year-old doesn't scrub the table to make the table clean, so not to necessarily wash the dishes in the most efficient, quick manner, but to do it as a practice for the enjoyment, the smell, all of the above. So we can see by all of these ways of feeding the child sense of wonder, that the child can fall in love with life, that life presents as worthy in some sense of being fallen in love with, and the child will fall in love with life no matter what presents. But there's a sense of lack when it hasn't been deep and wide enough to satisfy. Not that it's ever perfect, but there's a basic openness to all of life that all of us seek. And going back and doing some of these things for ourselves gives us an opportunity to claim those and to fall in love with our lives. And so the final thing that I wanted to offer is that the child also shows an amazing hunger, or not hunger, this would be characteristic, is their joy and their sense of gratitude. And this is just a natural outflow. And of course you experience the joy in the videos that we've seen, and we all have experienced children's joyfulness to some extent. The joy is deep. It's you know, when we think of the happiness of a birthday party or something like that, there's an excitement and joy there. But you hear that sense of wonderment and deep pleasure and joy in those children's voices. When he was talking about something so beautiful, it's just an absolute marker of that. And when we experience life like this, we want to celebrate it. We want to ritualize it. And that's another thing, another way that I notice that we are so hungry in our world today, that we've lost the ritual and the celebration that we used to experience. And reflecting on this, it's really the outpouring of being in love with life that feeds that and makes ritual rich and meaningful, because there's something to celebrate, and there's gratitude for life, deep gratitude. So it's kind of back to what we do in the mornings with the children. We again bring in the 4 elements, and we've got a child playing the Native American drum. We do some rattling. You know, all the indigenous cultures used a drum and a rattle. It was a part of all these cultures. The rattling is about calling in the spirit and releasing anything that doesn't serve. And so I do the rattling of the child who's going to drum and the child who's going to be the rattler for the day, but then the children take it over. So I didn't want to take a picture of the front of any of the children. So you see me here performing the rattling, serving this child in that way. And then I have a large shell of water and do a sprinkling for each child. We have had the children dip their hand in and do it for themselves, but honestly, it's like they love the evoking of the rain and the receiving of water as a gift. And so I just do a kind of bestowing or blessing with the water, and they tell me it has to be 3 times. One time is not enough. I have to do three sprinkles of water with them. And then of course, you know, we're seated on the earth, and the drum is very much vibrationally helps us to really feel our bodies on the planet. And then we're going to chant. We chant some vowels from the Celtic tradition or the Druidic, with the basis of our language, which is vowels. So we do a chant of 3 vowels, and then of course we're gathered around the candle. And I recognize that this is really the way that Indigenous peoples have always gathered and celebrated, to gather around the fire with drum and rattle, to chant, and to tell stories, to call in the cycles of Mother Moon and Father Sun and the stars. The children have been working this ritual. Really, the children have developed it with me, just as I explained about the water. Things have evolved over about a 6 or 7 year period. And I didn't get permission from the parents, but we end with silence. And the children just naturally, I'm seated, and I used to only do it for like 1 minute. I thought, okay, that's probably enough. And then I just started experimenting with it. And the children, if you know the child's pose from yoga, they virtually all put their faces down and go prone on the ground. And we meditate for 3 or 4 minutes like that now. They just have such a natural reverence. Even children who have no religious tradition whatsoever, they, will put their hands together and walk so slowly and reverently around the circle. I remember a dear friend of mine who's Muslim, and when her little 3-year-old grandson came to visit and they were having the regular daily prayers, she says, Omar is the first one. He runs with the prayer mat and says, Papi, it's time. And she noticed her 3-year-old grandson's natural reverence right away. The child's just so ready to celebrate life and to ritualize life. So that is where I'll stop. Love to open up anything, any commentary, or we have a song that we'd love to share at the end, but love to have a conversation about any of this.
I'd like to say, I mean, I just found that this whole everything you were talking about and watching those videos are just so enchanting, and just like, I had an immense love of nature. I've had my whole life, but to be just led through it in such a beautiful, gentle way, which is both educational and inviting discovery. Like watching you take them along that path so that they could look at the flowers and the butterflies and all the different various things they saw, and just like leisurely being with each of those things. And it's something that I discover on my walks as an adult, that I love taking the same walk over and over again, because every day it's different. And but as I think, as mostly with kids, they're not allowed to just sort of hover and linger, and so that was beautiful. And I have to just share that there's a memory that I have from my childhood that is still, I think of it a lot, and part of the reason I think about it is because I'm interested that I remember it. And I was 6, and we lived in Springfield, Illinois, and we lived in a new housing development, and they hadn't filled. It was an old farm. The old farmhouse was at the end of the street, and there was a field in back of our house. And I used to love the field because it was magical and wild. And I remember one afternoon, I think it was in the fall, maybe early October, and I was lying on my back in that field, and I had the idea that if I could keep my eyes open and watch as daylight turned into night, that I would know God. And I couldn't do it. It took longer than I expected. And I think my mother called me into the house, and she probably wouldn't have wanted me to disappear into the long grasses at night anyway. But I so often think of that because for me, it was sort of and I'm only realizing this as an adult, that it was like sort of like a combination of, I want to know God personally. God is in the field and in the sky. And if I just sort of like do this in the right way, and I'm attentive enough, then I'm gonna get to know God personally. And
I feel that what they do at school is their sacred work.
Muted.
All right. There we go. All right. I don't know what you're seeing. I see 4. Thank you. Okay, good. little tricky there for me on that, but well, I don't know if you were here for the introduction, but Trevi does a lovely work with Radical Joy for Hard Times, with wounded places on the planet, and creating beauty in those places. So she has a real sensitivity to that, and I really loved her sharing about remembering that she felt like if she could stay in that field as a young child, that and watch the day turn to night, that she would touch God. There was just, her wonderment was so kindled and hungry. And interesting that she said she still often thinks about that, which is the experience of so many of the people in that book, The Original Vision, that I shared the one example out of early on in that. So I'd like to open the floor. I definitely have some more that I can say, but I would like to check the chat. Also, I wasn't sure I could check the chat while that was going on. I didn't want to mess anything up. So I'm gonna double check on the chat. Looked like Carol needed to leave early. But Jen or Josh, I'd love to hear from you. Looks like Jennifer unmuted herself. So I'm gonna let Jen go first, if you don't mind, Josh. Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, that was just an amazing trip back, and not necessarily to my childhood, even though I did go to Montessori school. I'm going to have to take a little bit more time. I don't have a lot of memory, specific memory of those years of my life, but I homeschooled all of my children during those formative years. And it was just fun. I was grabbing my phone and flipping through my phone, finding the walks that we went on, and the little bird nests and the bees and everything. That was just such a sweet time for me as a mother, and I know for my kids. And what was just popping up was that, during those 2 to 6, even birth to 6, is just an amazing, incredible time. And then what happens at 6 or 7 is, I've been doing some studying, is that they become aware of self.
Right.
And I think it would be wonderful if you know, as I like to see myself as a 51-year-old child. Okay, but I think that we need to have a Montessori school for older people.
I'm actually working on that, but go ahead.
No, I think that's great. I would like to invest in that. Just getting adults to a place of that birth to 6-year-old consciousness, where they're not conscious of self. Let's strip that away and relearn how to be a child. You know, we lose our innocence, but we can get that back. And if we go out and watch the kids and be with them and be as them. And that's what I loved about my homeschooling experience. And it was awesome. So, and I don't know why I homeschooled. I was just led into it. I wanted to be with them and I wanted to have that. And I don't know that my kids were those homegrown kids, but it was, thank you. That was a really nice, sweet trip for me this past hour. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jennifer. That's so gorgeous that you were able to do that with your children. It is. It's just such a gift to be with them. And I just recognize that all the time. They just bring something so precious into, they just remind you, like you're saying. I mean, I think they remind us of the core of ourselves. And that sense, I think Josh said it this morning, that an adult is what did you say, Josh? You're going to have to repeat it again.
Ashley Montague, adults are failed children.
Failed, is that right? Failed children?
Failed children.
Failed children, yeah. They're really meant to keep all of that going forward. So yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, fantastic. Hearing all the different avenues that you're using to help kids open to nature and in all different ways. Totally right on, totally what we need, what we all need. And of course, we adults need it. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing more important than helping us open, and the way to do it is through the child, the children, and through the child in us. And so I'm so excited about what you're doing, about how to learn how to best facilitate that. Yeah, I just really got excited about having, I think about cosmic paleo. I think I'm a cosmic paleo. And the idea of drumming and by the fire, and the stories we're hearing are the universe stories. And to combine that, I just got really happy thinking about envisioning that. So thank you for spurring that. Yeah, it's good for now.
You're welcome.
Thank
And
you.
that's the perfect segue into something I did want to share that's happened. As I mentioned, that I took a deep time course, not the full 9-month course that some have just finished, but that was a short course. And Yona French Hawk was one of our teachers
Wow.
who appeared here a couple days ago. But you know, I brought some of this cosmic vision back to the young ones, and I've been sharing a few of the things that they just have loved it. I just can't even tell you, like every single day, so many hands are shooting up, like they just want to repeat things and ask questions. And so we've gotten into talking about, well, you know, why why doesn't the earth, why can't we feel the earth turning? So I've had to go look it up, like, okay, and the earth is turning 1,000 miles an hour.
Yes.
And, you know, and in Montessori, the children are learning about numbers into the thousands and all that. So, you know, they're like, oh yeah, okay, 1,000 miles an hour, but gravity is holding us so close that we don't feel it. So there's just another, you know, bow to Mother Gravity, you know, which, you know, science, I don't know if you saw Sartneet's presentation.
I saw some of it. I know his, yeah, go ahead.
Gravity is the original, and science cannot explain gravity to this moment. I mean, to me, it's the cosmic hug. It's the allurement, you know, of everything. You know, gravity is what we can experience. We're experiencing it right now, each and every one of us, you know, and the children are just fascinated with that. And because they live in the space age, they know about astronauts. And so they ask me all these questions about, you know, or they say all these things about, astronauts can't breathe unless they have a, you know, spacesuit on. And, you know, they get really clear about, this is a precious place where we are, you know, back to that pale blue dot idea, you know, like this, we're in the middle of a cosmos here, and we have really special air here. Oh, and we'll talk about, I got to tell them that it rained for 1 million years. That's how the oceans got filled up. Right, Noelle? Like, these are things that we might have learned sometime in school for a test. Are you kidding me? We didn't internalize it. We didn't celebrate it. We didn't feast on it and enjoy it, you know? So, I mean, that's a lot of it. Like those are such simple, basic things, you know, like talking about the water cycle and and that's something I've just come to, that, you know, we learned it kind of, you know, but we never had the opportunity to just take on the gift of the air and the water and the earth and the fire. Right?
We didn't feel it or savor it or embody it. It's just in our left brain. We just thought we hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
And it's completely different. And to me, this is what's going to save us, is our capacity to be with the magnificence of simply what is. And that's what gives me hope, because it's all right here for us. So we just keep opening with our awe and wonder and reveling and celebration, and who knows what we can create, what we can generate with all that passionate, there's no words for it. The passionate, no words for being with it all.
Beautifully said.
Go ahead, Noelle. Yeah.
No, I'm just enjoying this conversation tremendously. I think I was that first adult that said you want to take your class. So Jennifer, I'm right there with you. I just, you know, Annie, you're such an inspiration. Your love of children and how you just bring out so much in them. It you know, it just gets to my heart. I just love it.
Oh gosh, Noelle, you've just been so welcoming these 2 years. You know, it wasn't too long after that I came on Co-Creators Convergence and had the conversation on all of this.
Yes, we've done some co-creating together here and in Texas too.
Fun.
And we'll be back in Texas this October.
I actually got to meet you. Yes.
That's right.
So, and Jen is in the Hill Country. So I'm
really?
down. We're going to meet, girls.
Hey, we're going back to Texas, October 14th, 17th. White Eagle Lodge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
let's come play together.
I've not heard that. Wow. Gosh, there were a couple of thoughts I had over time, but
can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
How do you encourage the parents to carry this into their homes and into their daily lives?
That is a real, I know the children bring things home to them, you know, come home talking about these things, but absolutely, Jen. Do you go by Jen or Jennifer?
Whatever you would prefer.
Okay.
I probably Jen. I can do the Jen. Okay. I'm a Jen.
Okay, Jen. yeah, that's actually kind of my next thing, because, the parents don't see what I see. And it breaks my heart. They get a little glimmer of it, but and I talk and we have parent meetings and all these things, but it's not the same. It's like you're saying, I mean, something about seeing those children and hearing their enthusiasm and seeing that, there's this beautiful moment in Maria Montessori's work, because she didn't know how to, next speaker. She just fed the children with, they want to mop the floor. Okay, let's make a little mop for you, and let's get a little bucket together. Oh, you want to, draw, and they didn't have things for children when she started in 1907. It was all just hurry and grow up and be an adult so you can earn some money and help support the family. Like, childhood was not recognized. And so as she
well, yeah, we didn't have child labor laws either. They had work.
Right. So as soon as they would be 7, 8 years old, for sure, they're on the street doing some work, right? So she's working with these younger children. And as she gave them the means to do things with their hands and be active in the environment and participate the way they wanted, they became so peaceful and joyful and quiet, but not an imposed quietness, a contemplative, like I'm saying, the little one scrubbing the same part of the table for 30 minutes, and she's going through the whole process of rinsing the brush and getting some more soap and wiping the table and all, emptying the water and all of that. She said at some point she's just stopped in the middle of the room and just said to herself, who are you? Who are you? Because and that's what we see in the Montessori room, is that natural peacefulness and contentment. And, it's through focus and all of this, but it's just precious. And so, even though I have the parents observe before their child starts, just on a day-to-day basis, I just want to go, this is how your child can be, and we just had this feast at the school where the children all sat for 45 minutes eating a lunch that they prepared on a long banquet table, and the parents all came and observed. It's called the feast. We have it once a year, and the parents come and observe. And every time, at least one parent says to me, I can't believe he's sitting there for 45 minutes at the table and not getting up, but they're so focused and so into that ritual and that celebration. So, yeah, we
do need to close here
to wrap up. So that was it. Yes, I wanted to.
It's been fantastic as always.
So
I love
thank
spending
you so
time.
much, and I've saved the chat, so I got to double check what's been put in there, because it looks like some really good stuff. Thank you so much, Jen and Josh and Noelle, for being here.
Yes, and you're welcome to stay for our next movie. It's very fascinating. They're going to have Jennifer Kaufman is here, and she's going to talk about the trauma that she sustained during the Boston Marathon bombing and how she recovered from that. It's quite a spiritual and healing journey. And then we're going to have after talk. And Jennifer, how long is the movie? I didn't know which version you're going to show.
Yeah, the version is 1 hour and 37 minutes, but we can stop it partway through if that, whatever serves the community. But the full movie is 1 hour and 37 minutes long.
Okay. See what looks good. We should get right into it when we come in and do a short intro.
Okay.
So hang on if you like, and let me see. You probably want to go ahead and stop your recording, Annie.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.